Okay, I'm back with another video. This one is going to be building on what I did in my last video, where I showed how you can get a live stream from Optitrack's Motive into Unreal Engine using a single skeletal mesh asset. In this video, I'm going to show how you can make a new skeletal mesh asset for each performer. This is the workflow that I've been doing recently, and I found it to be really useful, especially when I'm going to import a whole lot of FBX motions. I just think it's an easier way to manage things. I'm going to show a tool that I made to make this process quite a bit easier and more reliable. And I'm sharing that tool on my GitHub. Before I crack into it, though, I want to apologize. This isn't the best day to make a YouTube video. I'm here in my office, and this is a two-story building, and when it's windy, like today, the building creaks and groans like I'm on some kind of whaling ship. So apologies for that. Hopefully it doesn't come through too much. I got my microphone quite a bit closer to my face, and hopefully that makes all the audio acceptable. But anyway, let's do it. So just like before, I've got a motive running in the background, and it's a piece of motion that's playing here on the timeline. Just going to stream that into Unreal Engine. So I've already got my Unreal Engine project. This is exactly the project that I left off in my last video, where we looked at this skeletal mesh, and we're going to stream onto it. I've got my live link stream here with my performer, and if I open the retargeting asset, I can see the results of that motion here on the retarget assets. So this is exactly what I showed in my other video, the last one. What I'm going to show this time is how to make one of these skeletons and procedurally make these retargeting assets here using a tool that I have. So the situation where this comes up is, let's say I've recorded a session like this with a boatload of motions from this one performer, and I want to bring all of those motions into Unreal Engine. Well, even if I want to do a live session with this performer, I've still found it useful to build a custom skeletal mesh for this performer and a custom retargeting asset. It's just keeps things much clearer and tidier. The other method will work, and you can use it for any character. It will scale. You can even import FBX motions onto that, and it will scale appropriately. So that's a fine workflow, but this is just what I'm doing to keep things a little more organized, and I thought I'd share it. All right, so let's crack into it. This character, I'm going to make a new folder. This performer, rather than a character, I'm going to call this a performer, and this is Sophie. And in this folder, I'm gonna build a new skeletal mesh that is for Sophie. So over here in Motive, I'm gonna export a motion. It doesn't matter which one of these I export. It could be any of these. You would need to reconstruct and solve, etc. And then export tracking data, and you get the standard export window. I use these settings always. So this is binary FBX. These stay at centimeters. Down here we have use timecode. I don't need it in this situation, so it's not toggled on. You definitely need to export the skeletons. That's exactly what we need. Here under the option skeleton names, you can leave it at all skeletons. We only have one skeleton and one rigid body in this. But you could, if you have more than one skeleton, you can choose custom and then just leave the name of the skeleton that you're interested in. You cannot import an FBX motion file from Optitrack into Unreal Engine with two skeletons in it. It just won't work. You'll only get one showing up in Unreal. I always use the name separator that is a colon. The one that's a minus doesn't work quite as well. When you use a colon in applications like Maya and Motion Builder, it shows up like a namespace. And Unreal Engine will quietly ignore any namespace or anything before the colon, so it makes things quite a bit easier. So I always use the colon. I don't need any rigid bodies in this situation, so I'm going to leave that off. And down here at the bottom is an option called Stick Skeletons. Now this is an interesting new option in Motive 3 that tries to make a skeletal mesh essentially, and this was intended to make it easier to import motions from Optitrack's motive into Unreal Engine, but the way that they've implemented this, I've had a difficult time getting it to work. So what I mean is they've got a bound mesh and the skeletal hierarchy, but they've parented the skeletal hierarchy underneath the bound mesh. So when you bring it into Unreal Engine, you don't get a root bone, and you're unable to stream onto it. And it also doesn't reliably work when you export without that option. So I haven't found a way to make this useful, so I don't ever use it anymore. I tried. And if anybody has found a way to make this useful, you know, put it in the comments. So you just export this. I've already exported all these motions, so I'm just going to cancel because these are already here. Now, when I have these motions, so here's all those exports in a file browser. I'm gonna bring that into Maya. I'm just gonna pick one of those. Doesn't matter which one because we're gonna delete all the motions when we make this skeletal mesh asset. Deleting all these motions because we just want the skeletal mesh at this stage of the operation. So there's the motion, and what I have, and it looks like this. It's got a namespace and then the root bone and all the other bones. So at the root is a locator, and everything else is a joint in FBX terms. And I have a script that I run that will convert all this into a bound mesh with the hierarchy that Unreal Engine likes. And this script here is on my GitHub. There's my GitHub. I'll leave this in the description. It's the same project that I put my other stuff in that I pointed at in the last video. And these scripts are described here. These are the Maya scripts, and they live here in the Python directory. There's a Maya folder, and these are them. You need all of these things as described here on the home page. You need the poses as well as these Python scripts. Put all them in one place, add them to your path, and then you can import them with an import line like this. And then you just need a few things. You need to tell it which name separator you're using. So I'm using the colon. You need to tell it where your JSON poses are. And this is so that you can put the skeleton into different poses. We're going to put it into an A pose. This is the function that makes it run. So you can just select all this and execute, and it'll take a moment to import all the libraries, and then it will run through all of the joints, making a new piece of geometry for every joint, and then combining them and putting it into an A pose, and it pops up a window asking you where do you want to save your result, your skeletal mesh. And I'm going to save it here on the desktop. And you can add FBX as the extension, or it will, put the extension there for you. So here's what you get as a result. You get the locator that it started with, which we don't need. You get a root joint now replacing that locator, and underneath it is all the rest of the joints for this skeleton, and a single polymesh that is rigged and bound to that skeleton, so that when you move this skeleton around, it moves as expected. So we don't actually need to save this scene. We can close it because we have made that skeletal mesh, and we're going to import it here. It's on our desktop, and there it is there. And when you import, you get these options. There are a couple of important things. This needs to be empty, and you need force front X axis toggled on. I believe everything else is the default, but let me just reset to the default and see if that's the case. Empty, force front X, and then import. And this is what we got. Now you want it to be facing to the right. That's the X forward, not facing forward. That's the default, because this is how the motions are coming in from Optitrack. And now I typically would make a motion folder like this. So now I would import those motions. I'll reset this to the defaults. You pick your Sophie. And here there are a couple of important attributes. Force front x-axis is important. And this one here that says snap to closest frame boundary. Because our motions are not 30 FPS and frame aligned, if we don't choose this, our motions are at 120 FPS, so we save this at a high sample rate right out of the Motive software, and we'll get a pop-up error if it doesn't end exactly or start exactly on a frame boundary, which is going to be the case because it's coming in through FBX with timestamps or something. I'm not exactly sure. I understand this fully, but I do know that if we don't have this toggled and try and import 120 FPS motion, we're going to get an error about frame boundaries. Toggling this on solves that. Well, that took a while, but now those motions are in here. And if we look at this skeletal mesh, if we look at this, we can now see that this skeletal mesh has those those animations associated with it. The next step is to make some retargeting assets specific for this skeleton to retarget to the mannequin for my workflow. That's what I've been doing, retargeting to the mannequin. And here's how I'm doing it. I have some tools that I'm going to add to this project here into a folder that I'll call the Python folder with a capital P. And I'll open this here in the Explorer. And I'll add to it some files from the GitHub project. So if we go in here, there's an Unreal Engine project with these three things, and there's also a widget here, and I'll put all of these things into my project. Now in the last video, I mentioned how you can clone this whole project. But I kind of glossed over it a little bit, so I'm gonna go through and actually do a clone. Here's a place where I'm gonna clone it to. If you install Git, which is easy to do, you just do a Google search for install Git and you'll find the download right here. Download it, right here at the root level. Download it, and then just when you get all these options, just select the defaults. Don't go with anything other than defaults. And you should get a right mouse button menu which has this option, open git bash here. That will open a shell in this location. I'll show you. Looks like this. There. That's the same location that we're in here. And in this shell, we can now clone this project. You come over here, make sure this is on HTTPS, because that's the easiest way to authenticate. It authenticates through the web browser, I believe. And then you click this button and it copies this path to the clipboard. Then you come over to your git bash and you type these words, git clone, and then paste. With the right mouse button, you can paste that path. And when you hit enter, it will make a folder with the same name as the project, and it will put all of the data in that folder. It will copy it into that project. And now we have all that stuff localized. And it's localized in a way that's easy to update. That's the beauty of Git. So if I add or change or fix something that's broken, you can just come back to your project in the same way. You open your git bash, and then you can use other git commands to update any change, pull the local changes. And anytime you want to do that or any other kind of git command, you could just Google what it is you want to do, git localized updates, and you'll get some guidelines. So there's lots of people using this, lots of clues on the internet. Don't be afraid of Git. Okay, so now I want to put this stuff into my Python folder of my project. There's my project, Python folder. And I have two things I'll stick in there. The widget, which is a uasset for Unreal Engine 5.2.1. So it's a compiled thing and it only works with this version. And then these Python scripts I'll put in the same place. There's only one of these that you need. It's this one, but I'll just put them all because who cares about the others. And now that they're here, you can see there's the widget. You can't see the Python scripts unless you enable this option. There's an option under the editor preferences. This is a new option I stumbled on recently. You go to the plugin section in Python here, and right here is enable content browser integration. If you toggle this, you'll get an option to restart. And that's a good idea anyway, because when we restart, these Python scripts will be recognized. Whether you choose that option or not, I would need to restart in order for these Python scripts to start working. So Unreal Engine doesn't know I put them in there until we restart. So I'm going to hit this button, and I'll save all those things I just imported. And when it comes back, it will be aware of these new Python scripts that I just copied into the project. So now, because I've enabled that option, I have these Python scripts that are available. And there's a few handy things about this. Here's maybe the handiest. If I pick one of these, so this one here, if I run it, let's see, what's a better way to show this? If I look at this basic Python here with any kind of editor, here's Visual Studio Code, it just has a simple print statement. That's all this Python does. That's a Python command, a valid Python command. And when I come over here and I run this script with the run option, and I look at my output log, that's what it says down here. Down here in the corner, probably behind my head. Down here, it's printed that. So that's a simple way that you can make some Python and execute it now by just using the content browser. Write your script in your text editor, right-click, and then it will execute. We're not going to do that. We're going to use this widget to call these functions that are in that script that we want. And the way you run a widget is you right-click, run Editor Utility Widget, and then you get a new window. So this is what I've made to simplify my life. I'll go back to characters. Not that one. I want Sophie. I'll go back to Sophie, and I'll add it here. And now that this is added to the input, I can now use this button to make an IK rig for this skeleton. And when you click it, you get this down here, this new IK rig asset. It's also populated this section here. Populating this section here, now that both of these are filled, it means I can click this second button and get a retargeting asset that will fill out this third box. So with those two clicks, what happened? What happened was I've got a fully featured, IK rig that is guided by the settings that are on the mannequin. The mannequin is also in this IK rig, is now specified here. There's the mannequin, and there's the new IK rig asset that I just made. So this is now a valid retargeting asset that will go from here to here. And I still have my stream running, maybe? No, I need to add my stream back, and we can see it working in just a moment. So there's my stream from Optitrack's Motive. And if we go to preview scene and choose live link preview and name our subject here, we can see that it's moving. And if we go over here, we can move this to the side and see our retargeted result. So with just a few clicks, I've got a full setup. Okay, so that if you've ever tried to make one of these setups, you'll know how amazing that was just to do with a few clicks, because it's quite a tedious process to build these chains and then map all these chains and set all these settings so that you get a reasonable retargeting result. The key to why this works is the fact that they're both in an A pose. So if I turn this off, I guess I have to turn this off. If I turn this off, this matched pose is really one of the reasons this works so smoothly in terms of its fidelity. This tool here it saved me a lot of headaches, and it actually wasn't even that hard to make. I think anybody should be able to make one of these. Honestly, I wrote it in Python, and I just used the documentation. The developer who wrote that documentation, whoever that was, I really appreciate the efforts you made. It was really a lot of copy-paste. It wasn't a lot of mystery outside of that. So I appreciate it. This whole thing also works just as well with assets. So here we imported some motions, and here we'll play this motion, and you can see it's gonna remap. And this is how you would retarget any single motion or any group of motion. You can pick one of these things and use this export selection and choose a place for it to go, and it will make a Manny version of that same motion. We'll put an underscore. So I'm going to add that suffix, and it will make a new Manny version, which is here. And if we look at that, it's just a straight up animation sequence for the Manny. Here's another thing that I want to show, another sort of function that's on this tool, this button here. Let's open the retargeter again, and we look at the details pane and our chain mapping window. These bones are set to none because I don't have those bones in my source skeleton. So their mapping is set to none. They only exist in the target skeleton, but they don't exist in the source skeleton. And by default, the tool wants to name match these things. And let me show you something that happens. If you change your source rig IK asset or your target rig IK asset, either one, if you change that, like I'll change it to the one we made in the other video, you can see down here these joints have all been updated to be a pinky or a finger or a clavicle. And that's not good. That will make bad looking motion on our target. You'll see the fingers being all messed up and other issues with the twist joints. So all these need to get set to none, and I did that manually in my last video, but I want to show you here that I made this handy function that will change those to none for this particular skeleton. It uses name matching and is expecting this for the Optitrack skeleton. So if you've got a different skeleton, this button or this whole tool won't work for you, but there's a little fixed chain mapping kind of function here. And the only other button on here is this one, which is called foot speed. This is another function that I made, and I'll talk about that in another video. That function is for this feature here where it's called speed planting. So I'll make a whole video just on speed planting and what that's all about. I think I'm gonna wrap this up here, but this is the workflow that I've been doing to retarget motions in bulk. This works with a single selection or a group selection, just the same. It will be exactly the same, and it will just step through all these motions and retarget from one to the other. I'm gonna have another video soon which will go into more detail around these settings and things I've discovered as I was trying to make these similar stuff in here. So hang out for that one. Thanks a lot for your interest in these videos. I hope they're helpful, and yeah, best wishes out there and making stuff. Cheers. Bye.